Now to get our regular meeting started, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know I had a, that's a different. I now declare this meeting is 7/24/2019 duly open, and we'll start right off with our regular agenda with the approval of regular session minutes for July 17th, 2019. Board, I know you've had those in draft content at least by Friday and had the opportunity to review them and any required changes that are needed. Do I have a motion for approval of the regular minutes of 7/17?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Been moved and received a second. Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Item number C, we have a proclamation this morning for the designation of Child Support Awareness Month in Clermont County. I understand that Brenda Gilrath is here to accept the proclamation. Thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you,
You bet. Proclamation for Child Support Awareness Month in Clermont County, August 2019. Whereas parenting and support go hand in hand in ensuring children grow up safe and healthy, and children and families stay out of poverty, our children are our most precious resource, and by investing in them, we secure a future of hope and opportunity for us all. And whereas ensuring that children receive the support that they deserve involves working partnerships between county, state, and federal agencies, parents, legislators, judges, healthcare professionals, advocacy groups, and many others. And whereas more than 13,000 Clermont County families benefited from more than $35 million in child support monies collected in fiscal year 2018. And whereas the vision of Clermont County Department of Job and Family Services, Division of Child Support, is that children can count on both parents for the financial, medical, and emotional support they need to be healthy, successful. And whereas the purpose and mission of the Clermont County Department of Job and Family Services, Division of Child Support, is to enhance the well-being of children, ensuring that assistance in obtaining support, including financial and medical, is available to children by locating parents, establishing paternity, and establishing support obligations and monitoring and enforcing those obligations. And whereas during Child Support Awareness Month, we recognize all parents who are deeply committed to the success of their children. Our children's lives count enough to make every possible effort to ensure that a solid foundation is established for every child in Clermont County. Now therefore let it be proclaimed that we, the Board of Clermont County Commissioners, do hereby declare the month of August 2019 as Child Support Awareness Month, and it's signed by myself, Edwin H. Humphrey, Vice President, and Claire B. Corcoran, Member. Brenda, thanks so much for being here with us today. Child support obviously is very, very important to us as Board of County Commissioners and to all of us here in Clermont County. Thanks for the hard work that you do and the ability to represent those children and ensure that their financial and well-being is taken care of. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You bet. And the podium is yours.
Thank you.
If you have a few words you'd like to
Thank
say.
you. I just have a couple of comments. I would like to send a great big thank you out to the employer community for their efforts associated with administering our wage withholding and our medical insurance orders. Another great big thank you goes out to our local partners, specifically Juvenile Court, Domestic Relations Court, Court of Common Pleas, Adult Probation, the Sheriff's Office, the Clerk of Court's Office, for the services that they provide on our behalf every day. And lastly, a great big thank you to this Board of County Commissioners for their ongoing support of our program and for the proclamation. If anyone is interested in additional information about our program, I always encourage them to visit our website at www.clermontsupportskids.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Would
so
Would you
much.
honor us with a picture this morning?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank
Okay.
you.
And is there anyone else with you here you'd like to
Tim Day.
have in the picture?
He loves to have a picture.
I know he doesn't, but okay.
Stand by me. We don't
Okay.
have to
All right.
stand. Stand.
You're right.
I'm good, Mary, thanks. Thanks for hanging in there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so
Thank you
much.
for your work.
Thanks so much. You got to stand by something that was your height.
I know, finally.
Item number D is presentations. Many times here at the Board of Clermont County Commissioners, we have great presentations. This morning is no different. We have folks here with us this morning that are from our team here to give some presentations. The first one's the Clermont County Emergency Management Agency. And it'll be presented by Pam Haverkos, our Director of Emergency Management. Thanks for being here this morning, Pam.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. As Commissioner stated, my name is Pam Haverkos. I'm the Clermont County Emergency Management Agency Director, and I'm here today to talk about our All Hazards Mitigation Plan. We have been working as a county with all of our public safety partners to develop this plan update for about the last 8 months. So why are we doing this plan? Really, we're working on this plan so that we can protect lives and property through the identification of hazards and the development of mitigation strategies to reduce or eliminate risk. So overall, we're looking at what could affect the county, what's the probability that it could occur, what's our vulnerability to that hazard, and then what would be the consequences if that hazard occur, and then what could we reduce or eliminate to mitigate that hazard, and then whatever we can't mitigate, we plan for. But the real reason is we are required by 44 CFR Federal Code of Regulations, Part 201.3, and the Robert T. Stafford Act to have a plan. So what they both require is that every county has a plan, and that includes all the villages and cities have to be part of a hazard mitigation plan. The plan has to be updated every 5 years, and really the stick is that we have to have a plan in order to be eligible for pre- and post-disaster mitigation grants through the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
So if you have a tornado come through, this is the only way you qualify.
It's not qualification for reimbursement expenses. If we had a federal declaration, it would be for mitigation dollars.
Okay.
And anytime the state of Ohio receives a federal declaration, it brings with it hazard mitigation grant programs. So in order to be eligible for those, the separate mitigation dollars, you would have to have a
Okay.
plan.
Very good.
So this all started in the early or mid 2000s. So the county adopted the first mitigation plan in 2006. We updated the plan in 2014, or finalized the plan in 2014 for our second round. And so now we're working on the third iteration of this plan. So we actually started this process almost 2 years ago by applying for hazard mitigation grants to be able to hire a contractor to help through this process. And what the contractor has been able to do is not only write the plan, facilitate all of our meetings, but they actually have the expertise to run some in-depth hazard modeling for us through a program called HAZIS that FEMA has developed. We actually didn't receive those grants, though, until August of 2018, which is kind of what put us a little bit behind the curve on getting this plan moving forward. And then as soon as we received the notice of award, we hired the contractor, and we started with our core planning team. So we identified critical members and critical stakeholders of our community to have a core planning team, and then we also had multiple public meetings. So at this point, we have a draft plan based on all of our stakeholder feedback and our community partnership and community feedback, and we're ready to launch a 30-day comment period. So we're looking for feedback on the plan, and then at that point, our contractor will integrate any changes that we have, and then we'll submit it to Ohio EMA and FEMA for their review and approval. And at that point, then we would bring it back to the commissioners for the final adoption of that plan. And then as soon as we have one jurisdiction adopt the plan goes into effect, and we have a 1-year period from that point to get all of the cities and villages to adopt the plan in order to participate in the plan. But we also will reach out and get all of the townships to adopt the plan as well, which is what we did the last time. So I have provided you guys not only the presentation, but you have an executive summary, so it goes over a lot of the materials. So this is what the plan looks like. There's 6 sections. An introduction, basic history and demographics of the county, how we went about the planning process. But the real meat is the hazard risk assessment. So how do we prioritize hazards? How do we identify hazards and how do we prioritize them? And then what mitigation actions, so the hazard mitigation section would go over what mitigation actions we might want to implement over the next 5 years to reduce or eliminate risk. And then the final section is the schedule and maintenance, and then all of the appendices, which is just all the documentation that was used in the development of the plan. So these are all the stakeholders that we reached out to or that participated. And I won't go through all of them, but we tried to engage all of the stakeholders that might have some role in the mitigation of all of the risks that we pre-identified. And it includes not only county partners, but private sector partners, faith-based nonprofit partners, as well as state and federal partners that would have a role in our community. So as I said, the meat is on the hazard prioritization and the mitigation strategies. So we identified 14 hazards that we wanted to look at, and then we rank them based on, again, the likelihood that it could occur in the county or has occurred in the county, the vulnerability to that hazard, and then the consequences. So a lot of it's based on historical data that we have. And in our previous plan, flooding was our #1 hazard, but this shifted that to severe storms as being our #1 hazard, mostly due to frequency. Number 2 would be tornadoes, 3 would be flooding, 4 would be a utility failure, 5 is hazardous materials, 6 windstorms, 7 landslides, then dam failure, invasive species, terrorism, extreme temperatures, drought, wildfire, and earthquakes. So I'll go more into depth on that. So then what we really focused on is what could we do to reduce or eliminate our risk to those hazards. And we looked at different things that we could do that were across all of these hazards. So we developed a few strategies that would be relevant to all of them. And we talked a lot about developing and updating backup power capabilities at critical facilities, so encouraging people to take the initiative to have generators if they have critical functions, make sure that they have enough fuel, etc. Really putting an emphasis on having continuity of operations plans, providing disaster preparedness education and outreach, updating our emergency operations plans. Again, the county has an emergency operations plan, but we strongly encourage all of our municipalities to have their own emergency operations plan. Maintaining our all hazard outdoor warning sirens, and then continuing code enforcement, which is done on a daily basis. But that includes fire code, building code, zoning, and floodplain management. So then looking at the individual hazards, so on severe storms, we talked, we've had a big push within emergency management to do public education on having multiple means of receiving alerts and warnings. And again, knowing what to do when you receive that alert and warning, and not just not taking action. You know, if you hear the sirens go off, seek shelter, and tune into local media and taking action. We also have been working with all of our partners to update our debris clearance following severe storms. Again, we've had a lot of severe storms lately that have caused a lot of trees on the roadways. I mean, this is something that happens annually, so, but again, just working to make sure that we're communicating with the appropriate partners to get those remedied. And then maintaining our National Weather Service Storm Ready certification, which this year we were up for a renewal, and we just received notification from the Weather Service that we received that renewal. And we're one of 23 counties in the state of Ohio, I believe, at this point that have that Storm Ready designation. And that's something that the county started in the early 2000s. So we were one of the pioneers of that program here in Ohio. Tornadoes, we talked a lot about promoting the Ohio Safe Room Rebate Program. Again, this is something that Ohio EMA funds through hazard mitigation grant programs. And as you can see on the box on the far right, shows that Clermont County actually it has the largest number of residents that have applied for and received these funds. So we have 11 residents throughout the county that have actually installed or built a safe room in their home. So that's a wonderful opportunity. And the other item is the identification of temporary storm-safe locations that people can go to, especially if they don't have a basement or a safe place to go in a high wind event. Flooding, we talked about improving stormwater management systems, identifying and studying poor draining areas to control flooding, replacement and repair of ditches and culverts to control flooding. Along the Ohio River, we talked a lot about identifying and studying riverbank stabilization projects, continuing to provide guidance to property owners about the acquisition or floodproofing of their property and the eligibility of using hazard mitigation grants to do that, and then encouraging residents to purchase flood insurance. And again, that's probably the best thing that we can do is encouraging residents to have flood insurance because that's not part of your normal homeowner's insurance or your renter's insurance. That's an additional policy that you would have to have. And that's run through the National Flood Insurance Program. Under utility failure, really we only came up with one mitigation strategy there, and that's for tree trimming along utility lines. I know a lot of community members aren't always very happy that we do that, but that plays a huge role in reducing our risk of widespread power outages. So it's really important that we continue to do that. Winter weather, public education on winter weather safety. Again, if you have to travel, making sure that you have appropriate resources should you be stuck somewhere. Looking at hazardous materials accidents, again, we have a lot of hazardous materials that are transported into and throughout the county via our roads, our bridges, our rail lines, our pipelines, our airport, and even the Ohio River. So we talked a lot about the development of wellhead protection program, continuing our annual local emergency planning committee exercises, maintaining our local emergency planning committee and our tier 2 reporting. So any facility that stores, uses or manufactures hazardous materials, they have to report annually to the local emergency planning committee, as well as the fire department and the state emergency response committee. So again, just encouraging to make sure that all of those entities are reporting and they're reporting correctly and accurately. In 2013, we did our regional commodity flow study to look at what hazardous materials were coming into our region, so looking at updating that plan. And then again, continuing public outreach and regarding disposal of household hazardous waste to make sure that people aren't illegally dumping. Landslides, again, especially following the 2018 flood that we had on the Ohio River, we've seen a lot of landslides. And then when we have heavy rains, I'm sure the county engineer can talk more extensively about the issues that they face with landslides on our roadways. So we came up with a variety of actions that we might implement. So developing a map of landslide-prone areas, enforcement of slide-prone area ordinances to limit fill and dumping, enforcing draining control regulations, implementing sanitary system codes, again, providing mitigation guidance to property owners about what they can do, implementing restraining structures to hold soil in place, implementing debris flow measures, implement grading to increase slope stability, consider vegetation placement management plans to increase soil stability, and considering placement of utilities outside of landslide-prone areas. And again, following the 2018 flood, the thing that we realized is we had a lot of slippage, and where for the state disaster relief program, we were eligible to receive that slide that actually affected the roadway, so the downhill slips. There was a lot of uphill slips where we had debris on the roadway. Well, the state disaster relief program will cover the clearing of that debris, but it doesn't actually cover the repair. That is what they deem as mitigation action. So we would want to look at if we have any of those uphill slips, what we could do to mitigate those. Dam failure. Again, the plan has a comprehensive list of all the dams that we have in the community. We have Class 1 dams, Class 2 dams, and Class 3 dams, and then some uncategorized class dams. Most of our dams are owned by homeowners associations, so it's really important that we're doing an education with those dam owners, but the coordination with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources to implement their dam safety program, because they manage the program, and then encouraging dam owners to develop their emergency action plans and actually submit them to the public safety agencies that would respond, encouraging them to be prepared to respond if there should be a failure, and then public education regarding those downstream risks should we have a dam that fails. And again, also coordinating with the local communities to make sure that they have an understanding of the risk. Invasive species. Again, public education is really important on the hazards, hazard identification, the behavior, and the quarantine procedures, making sure that if people have lumber that's been in the quarantine area, that it's going to the right location through the USDA. The importance of not importing or exporting firewood, and then working with our agricultural producers to monitor and minimize nutrient runoff to prevent harmful algal blooms. And I'm sure, again, Water Resources and Lyle could speak more to the effect of harmful algal blooms in our drinking water system. This year, or in this plan update, we incorporated terrorism. In the past, we've focused primarily on natural hazards, but we did look at some other factors. So terrorism, again, encouraging critical infrastructure to implement protective measures. So looking at what risk factors and what hazards could affect your facility, and looking at what you could do to minimize that risk, whether it be a cyber threat or a physical security threat, by putting bollards or card swipe access to limit access to your facility. Coordinating with our law enforcement agencies to ensure safety at large public venues and large public gatherings, and then providing active aggressor guidance, which we've been working with the Sheriff's Office and all of our local police departments to do a lot of active aggressor training, so we're already actively working towards that. Extreme temperatures like we had over the weekend. Again, providing guidance for vulnerable populations, and then providing guidance on utility assistance programs, so individuals and families that might need assistance, making sure that they have access to that information. Oh, sorry. We included drought. Again, encouraging property owners to install water reduction equipment, developing water storage plans, water use ordinances, contingency plans, and water delivery system plans. And then again, encouraging farmers to purchase their own crop insurance. Wildfires, while risk of wildfires is significantly lower than other portions of the state of Ohio, we still have a risk for wildfires. So again, providing education on smoking hazards and the risk of recreational hazards. So again, people that do smoke, not throwing their cigarette butts into landscaped areas that might start a fire. And also just educating the public that when we have those extreme fire danger and red flag warnings, what they are, and again, educating that we don't want any open burns during that period, and how to actually get a permit if you are going to have an open burn. Earthquakes, again, our community, we are in an earthquake prone area. But again, education to foster awareness of the hazard, the earthquake hazard, and then what we might do to mitigate the consequences of that event. And then again, working with the insurance industry to educate the public about the need for a separate policy for earthquake. So moving on to the next steps, as I said, we've gone through the planning process and we have a draft plan. It looks like this. And so we're going to do a 30-day comment period. Did I miss one?
know quite a book.
Okay, yes. And honestly, this doesn't even include Appendix F, which is the meeting documentation. But the plan is available online at our website, https ema.clermontcountyohio.gov/mitigation-plan. It's also available at all 10 library branches. And then we'll also have a copy here at the County Administration Building. If you go to the library, there are surveys that people can fill out. The hard copy surveys will be in the front of the binder. And then there's a place that you can drop it off. There's a drop box there. And if they don't have a drop box displayed, you can give it to the reference desk and they'll get those back to us. Online, we have a electronic survey, a SurveyMonkey tool set up, so anyone can do that. But even if you don't do either one of those options, you can always send us comments via mail to 2279 Clermont Center Drive, Batavia, Ohio 45103. You can email us, which is clermontema@clermontcountyohio.gov. And as I mentioned, we have these drop boxes at all 10 library branches in the County Administration Building. And then we'll be out at the fair over the next few days, trying to engage the public, just to gather their insight into what they deem as hazards and what they would like to see in terms of mitigation actions. So I really appreciate your time, and do you guys have any questions? Again, once we have all the comments back, we'll integrate those comments and then release the final draft, as well as submit those to Ohio EMA and FEMA for their review. And once that comes back, then we'll be coming back to this board with the final plan for the approval. And then we'll have a 1-year period to go and get all of our local communities to sign off on it as well.
Hazard identification, Pam.
Yeah.
Does the stored materials, chemicals, and those kind of things fall under that chemical hazard category?
The hazard
Is that where you picked
materials
that up?
accident, yes.
Right.
And so we have
like
a
large bulk propane, large bulk chemicals, those kind of things throughout the county.
So Doug Baumgartner, he's here. He is actually overseeing all of the submissions for our Tier 2 reporting. So any facility that stores, uses, manufactures hazardous materials in the county, they have to report that annually by March 1st. And then we take all of the information and then we actually do hazard vulnerability analysis on those facilities. And then we coordinate with the local public safety agency, the local fire department, to verify that that information is accurate. Again, we're trying to make sure that our responders are aware of what's in the county and how they would respond if they have to respond to that facility.
And just due to the other states that have run into problems with drinking water, do we have hazards to our drinking water supply identified within that hazardous mitigation plan? One of the things that comes to light is, you would never think lead would all of a sudden become an issue, but if lead or some contaminant would show in the water to where we had to mitigate the use of that water, is that something that was
I would
taken
have to
into
defer that to Lyle on our drinking
I
water.
don't think that's identified specifically in that plan. We have other plans that identify some hazards. I know reference of both protection plans, and we have both protection plans for both of our water plants that use wells for the source water.
I mean, like another source story has just come out about, another community where lead levels have reached a particular point, and we all know what the story is of, other, not something that you would ever contemplate, but I just wonder, that is a large, to mitigate an incident like that is a huge undertaking,
Yeah, the lead was a different, the source of the lead actually
Right.
came from the home, so that
Understood.
wasn't. But again, that would be in our source water protection plans. It's not identified in this plan itself.
And we can, if that is something that we want to go back, again, this is why this 30-day comment period is so important. We've identified something that we hadn't considered, if we want to add a note in there. And then that way, if we ever down the road wanted to seek hazard mitigation grant program funds, we would be eligible to do that. So
I just, for my own, think about that, because if we actually had an incident where our water supply was contaminated, God forbid that would happen, the call would come to emergency management. At least this document would say to defer to, the water quality mitigation plan or whatever it is that you would use. But I look at that and I watch those newspaper reports and how they stumbled over that, trying to respond to what to do with that, and didn't seem very quickly or, straight to the point. I just don't think they had a plan in place for that. And even though we may never run into a hazard like that, I think it's a worthwhile hazard to identify.
Yeah, we've got a separate EPA type separate
Yeah.
requirement for
Right.
us to have our
Right.
emergency plan documents that are completely separate. And that's updated annually and submitted to EPA. So those documents exist, they're just separate from the hazard mitigation. I think it identifies the potential hazards. Our plan identifies how we would respond to each in those events.
And again, we talked about the LEPC exercises that we do annually. We've started to partner with Water Resources to make sure that we incorporate them into the exercise cycle as well. Again, it helps us as well as integrating them, but it helps them because they're required by Ohio EPA to do an annual exercise as well. So again, we're trying to work collaboratively to
And one of the things that comes to mind in that is my previous, they had large projects that went on to protect large reservoirs that could be contaminated by other sources such as terrorism. I know, and I just know one, New Richmond has a large water reservoir up on the hill between New Richmond School and the village of New Richmond that sits on the hill. It's obviously fenced, but it's not something that can't be accessed. So when you look at that, if you had a hazard like that, how would you address it in this plan? And they're not the only ones that has an outdoor water source somewhere,
Well, and as Lyle said, like the response to an incident would be covered in our emergency operations plans or in his source water protection plan or his contingency plans. This plan is solely focusing on what we can do to reduce or eliminate the risk. So infrastructure upgrades that we could make to prevent something from happening or deter it from happening. But we would have emergency plans on if we actually had to respond to such an incident.
Okay.
Any other questions? Again, thank you very much. We will be doing a lot of promotion moving forward. After this meeting, we'll be putting some information out through OPI on our social media sources, as well as sending some blast emails out to all of our community partners about the opportunity to participate. But again, thank you very much for your time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
We'll move on with presentations. My understanding, Jeremy Evans, our acting Clermont County engineer, is here today to talk to us about the annual report of roads, bridges, and culverts for the county of Clermont, Ohio. Okay. Jeremy, thanks for coming this morning.
Yes, thanks for having me. Jeremy Evans, acting county engineer. So this is a annual report covering the 2018 calendar year. These reports recently published, delivered to this office, your office, at the end of May. There are hard copies. There are a few back in the back. I believe there's something in your office as well as ours. Also be published on our website by the end of the day today, if anybody wants to take a look. So I'm going to go through and just highlight some of the pages from the report. I'm not going to go through all of them. So the first, the road condition. We have approximately 385 miles of roads that we maintain. Average condition rating of those roads is 64 out of 100, with 100 being new pavement. ODOT recommends that when a road reaches that 64 number, that it's due for resurfacing. Unfortunately, about 50% of our roads are at or below that number. In 2018, our average paving cycle was 38 years. So that means once every 38 years, we'll get to that particular roadway. New pavement has a life expectancy of 10 to 12. Fortunately, I know we've been here earlier this year to talk about the $5 permissive fee. That went into effect in January, started collecting that. So currently in 2019, we've cut that 38-year cycle down to about a 22, 24, or somewhere in that range. So making progress, still not where we need to be, but every little bit helps. On the bridges, 416 bridges that we maintain. We have replaced 149 since 2001. Average expectancy, life expectancy of a bridge would be about 50 years. We have 182 bridges that are in that age range, 50 years and older. So you can see we've replaced 150 thereabouts in 18 years. We have 180 now that are pretty much near the end of their expected life. So that's a concern. Fortunately, only 45 of those have been load restricted. So most of those 182 are still going strong. They're still holding on. And we do conduct annual inspections of those. So we're working to upgrade and replace as many as we can. Obviously, priority would go to the ones that are load restricted. This is a category that the recently passed fuel tax will go a long way to help. That went into effect, on July 1st. The state started collecting money. We'll start receiving funds in August. So we'll see a portion of that this year, but 2020 really will be the big year for us for both of those.
Jeremy, before you
Sure.
move on to this year, I know you guys put a contract in place for about $2.2 million of road resurfacing and pavement.
Yep.
What is that effect going to be on our 385 miles of road?
There's a slide on resurfacing we can cover, and if you have questions when we get there, we can
Okay.
address those too. No problem. Culvert condition rating, we have around 2,600 culverts, a little over. 158 are identified as critical, just means they have a rating of 3 or less. Fortunately, most of our culverts are in good shape. We're at a 7.2 out of a 9 scale. We do replace, I'll say on average, about 80 culverts per year. Just depends on size and complexity. Sometimes it's as many as 100, but overall culvert conditions, we're in pretty good shape. Capital improvement projects from 2018, we spent $760,000 on road projects, a little over $1.1 million on bridges. New equipment purchases accounted for a little over $600,000. Total investments there, $2.5 million. Of that number, $435,000 came from grants, most of that from OPWC, Ohio Public Works Commission. So our in-house maintenance, our force account work, total hours divided among those categories you see, a little over 50,000 total hours. Fortunately, in my opinion, the lowest category is the snow and ice removal. So I'd like to keep that low if we can. We had 15 snow events in 2018. We used about 5,600 tons of salt to cover those. So on to some of the financials from 2018. The 2018 resurfacing program, we highlighted, I think there were 12 roads, 10 roads, 12 segments, covering about 25 miles. Most of those in 2018 were just full depth repairs. There was only one road that was actually resurfaced. In that year, we spent about $709,000 on resurfacing in 2018. 2018 landslides, Beechwood Road was the only county road that we did a landslide project on. Total cost was about $50,000. That was down near the Terrace Ridge subdivision, kind of near the bottom of the hill in Beechwood. Bridges, 2018, we spent about $1.2 million. We covered the 4 bridges and culverts that you see listed here. So revenue sources, and again, these are 2018 numbers. We saw about $7.2 million in vehicle license fees, $2.4 million from fuel tax. Our total was around 10.4. The rest of the difference there, subdivision bonds, miscellaneous inspection fees, equipment sales, some reimbursements. So these are numbers that will be different moving forward. The 7.2 million vehicle license fee, again, that permissive fee went into effect in January, so that'll grow. We're anticipating about $1 million. So far, it's trending closer to like 900,000, but it'll be in that range. And again, January 1st on the fuel tax, this year we'll receive 5 months worth. Basically, our income will come in deposits in August through the end of the year. But overall, in a complete year next year, we'll get an anticipated $1.5 million from that fuel tax. So in 2020, that 10.4 will look more like 12.5, somewhere in that range. Again, just depends on how those predictions actually hold up. So total revenue, 2018 was 10.4. Total expenses, 9.8 million roughly. This chart just kind of breaks down some of the items we just talked about, the equipment purchases, the road program, some of those expenses. Now moving into the 2019 capital program. From the road standpoint, we have 16 roads, 36 miles. 11 of those roads will be repaired and resurfaced. 8 of those roads will be full depth repairs this year. We resurfaced in the future as needed. And again, just kind of depends on how they rate moving forward. So our estimate based on historical data was $2 million, a little over. Bids came in this year a little high, around 2.2. So that money that was added through the permissive fee, the effectiveness of that has already been cut a little bit because we're 10% growth on this resurfacing cost already. Hopefully that's not a trend that continues. Maybe this is just a little one-time blip, but we'll see how things go moving forward. In 2019 landslides, we had 3 planned. These are covered by FEMA from events I believe happened maybe late last year, early this year. We anticipate trying to get to those this fall from a construction standpoint. We are going to add one to this list. We had a landslide, I believe back in April on O'Bannonville Road. The road's currently closed down to 1 lane. With the benefit of the fuel tax coming in, it will help cover the expense to make that repair this year. We had anticipated applying for emergency funds through Ohio Public Works this July. Typically, every July they'll set aside a portion of their annual funds for emergencies. Unfortunately, there was such a backlog from last year. They took the money from this year, kind of backfilled what was there, so there was no emergency funds available for this year. So we're going to move this into our capital program and try to get that done, get that road reopened. Similarly, on the bridge program, this is what we had planned. We're going to make some changes to that as well. Price Road Bridge, closed, I believe it was April 2nd. Same thing, we had hoped or anticipated applying for those emergency funds, not available. So we're going to move Price Road onto this list into our capital improvement program for 2019, which means that we'll probably have to move some of these to make room just from a budget and time standpoint. Gibbs Road, Monterey, and O'Bannonville will probably be moved to 2020 to make room for Price. That won't completely cover the cost of Price, but again, the fuel tax that'll start coming in the last half of this year will help make up that difference. Price Road, we're trying to be aggressive. Our aggressive date would be the end of the year. Realistically, you'll probably carry into winter before that gets reopened, but we are moving forward with that. So instead of the 10 bridges, we'll cut 3, add 1, so we're back at 8, but and the total cost to be closer to $2 million there when we're finished. That's all I have. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
Due to a high cost of everything, any equipment concerns, replacements for this coming year?
Fortunately, equipment prices have stayed about the same. They haven't gone up as much as our construction costs have. On the earlier slide, there was $600,000 in equipment purchases from 2018. Over half of that was from dump trucks. We have around 30 in our fleet. We try to replace 2 every year as needed because they have a life expectancy. We usually get about 15 years out of each truck. So we will continue to do that just so that we're not putting it off and then someday hit with a big need all at once. So.
Jeremy, what's the full-time equivalence of the engineer's office? How many people?
Personnel, we have,
All told.
so I believe 53 is the current number. We've had some people leave recently, but we're right around 50 to 55.
Okay. And what's the capability of the engineer's office as far as paving? Can we pave?
So we're limited on force accounts, project size. You can spend up to $100,000, which doesn't get you a whole lot of resurfacing. So we're really not set up to do large scale, which is why we bid it out. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else, board? Any other questions?
I'm just always amazed at how nicely maintained the equipment is and washed and taken care of.
Yeah, we try. I mean, you got to make it last as long as you can, right? So.
Yes, and it looks they all look very good when they come out. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other presentations, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll move on to item number E, public participation. Is there anyone here this morning that would like to participate from the public? We welcome your comments, and seeing none, I'll close public participation and I'll move to item F, consent agenda. Board, the consent agenda has been prepared for you. We've had it in draft form since Friday so that you could review it and request any clarification or changes. Before we consider the consent agenda, are there any items that need to be removed from the consent agenda for further conversation or discussion?
None.
Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. I will move on to item G, the non-consent agenda, which starts on page 8. Starts with number 16. Number 16 is a recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners adopt resolution number 115-19, resolving to approve payment for vendors in the total amount of $1,805,234.34, as set forth in the BCC approval invoice reports for the checks dated July 24th, 2019, and BCC directed prepaid invoice reports presented by the county auditor on July 22nd, 2019, and further authorizing the county auditor to issue warrants pursuant to 319.16 of the Ohio Revised Code. Do I have a motion to pay the bills?
So moved.
I'll second the
Been
motion.
moved and received a second. Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Item number 17.
Morning, I'm Lyle Bloom, Director with Clermont County Water Resource Department, and item 17 is a recommendation to award the bid for project number 6401-60151 relative to the Milford Hills Drive and Brooklyn Avenue area water main replacement project located in Miami Township and the city of Milford, pursuant to the recommendations to Smith Corp. Incorporated out of Cincinnati, Ohio, for their lowest and best bid received on June 6, 2019. For a total amount not to exceed $768,106, and to execute the contract relative thereto, pursuant to and in compliance with the terms and conditions set forth therein, and the award of bid therefore or purchase order. So this project will replace about 7,000 feet of aging water main. The majority of it was installed in 1959. We actually have a main break there as we speak. We've got crews out there. We've had them. That's just an ongoing maintenance problem for us there. So this will be, I'm sure the residents will be very happy to get all this water line replaced. The bid from Smith Corp was 81% of our engineer's estimate.
Do I have a motion to approve item number 17?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lyle. Item number 18. Jeremy, good to see you back again.
Item 18 is a recommendation to accept the 2018 annual report of Clermont County Roads, Bridges, and Culverts for the County of Clermont, Ohio, received on 5/31/2019, pursuant to Section 554302 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Board, do I have a motion for approval of item number 18?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Item number 19.
19 is a recommendation to execute the satisfactions of mortgage, certifying that the terms of the mortgages and promissory notes they secured have been satisfied, and authorizing the county recorder to release the said mortgages of record for the following properties. It's 2232 Donald Road in Bethel and 6605 Goshen Road in Goshen.
Board, you've heard the reading of item number 19. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Item number 20. It's a recommendation of Karen Shearer, Executive Director, Clermont County Mental Health and Recovery Board, with the concurrence of Thomas J. Eigel, Administrator, to appoint Erica Coe as a Krompicher at 1055 Chrisfield Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45245, to serve on the Clermont County Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Boards for the term of August 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2023, pursuant to Section 340.02 of the Ohio Revised Code. Do I have a motion to consider Erica?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Item number 21.
Good morning. Mary Raines from the Office of Management and Budget. Item 21 is a request to increase the annual appropriation in the general fund for the Record Center overtime in the amount of $1,000, and to authorize the auditor to post it to the ledger. And this is all in conjunction with the move
Of all
from one
those
building
records.
to the new.
Board, you've heard the reading of item number 21 for overtime for the new Records Center. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. Tom, do we have any additions to the agenda?
We do. We have 4 items for the board's consideration to add to the agenda. The engineer's office, we have a contract for services with Strasser Construction. Second, in Department of Job and Family Services, a grant agreement with the Dave Thomas Foundation for adoption. Third, in Department of Job and Family Services, an agreement for recruiting services with Sharon Wiesenhahn. And last, we have an amendment to our agreement with Bethesda Healthcare for our Employee Assistance Program.
Board, you've heard the need for 4 add-ons to our agenda. Do I have a motion to add these items on today?
I move that we add these items on our agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. We've added 4 items on, and we'll take them in the order that you just read them.
Yeah, Mr. Evans?
Okay?
This is a recommendation to execute contract for services by and between the Board of County Commissioners of Clermont County, Ohio, and Strasser Construction of Columbus, Ohio, for the 2019 crack seal program in concert with the annual maintenance of county roads in various townships, and as more fully described in the scope of services identified in Exhibit A, attached thereto and made part thereof, all of which is in conjunction with the Ohio Department of Transportation 101G-18 purchasing contract with Strasser Construction, and for which excerpts thereof are included herewith in an amount not to exceed $149,490, with said services to be completed within the calendar year of 2019 pursuant to and in compliance with the terms and conditions set forth therein, and contingent upon the release of the required purchase order in concert with requisition number 2645-00 dated 3/15/2019 relative thereto. This is a crack sealing program for our roadways. It's the kind of the black squirrely lines that you see on the pavement. The idea is to kind of extend the useful life, maybe a little beyond that 10 to 12 year expectancy. So,
By sealing out the water.
yep.
You bet. Board, you've heard the reading of the first add-on for the county engineer contract for services with Strasser Construction for the 2019 crack seal program. Do I have a motion for approval?
Make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Mr. Painter.
Yes. Thanks, Jeremy. Next one is Department of Job and Family Services, Children's Protective Services Division. Morning. Hi, Connie.
Connie Tabu, Department of Job and Family Services. This is the recommendation of Timothy Dick, the Interim Director, Department of Job and Family Services, with the concurrence of Thomas J. Eigel, County Administrator, to authorize David L. Painter, President of the Board of County Commissioners, to execute the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption Grant Agreement by and between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, located in Columbus, Ohio, including all understandings and assurances relative thereto, for the county's participation in the Wendy's Wonderful Kids program for the provision of funding for a child-focused adoption professional to move children from foster care into permanent adoptive homes, work with youth who are heading towards termination of parental rights and/or youth who are in a planned permanent living arrangement, in the amount of $70,000 with no local match required therefore. It's effective for the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30th of 2020, pursuant to and compliance to the terms and conditions set forth therein, and in concert with the grant application ratified by the Board of County Commissioners on May 8th, 2019.
And just for the record, the reading that the price is $70,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No problem. Board, you've heard the reading of the add-on for the Department of Job and Family Services for an agreement with the Dave Thompson Foundation. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes. The next one is Job and Family Services Division Agreement for Recruiting Services.
Recommendation of Timothy Dick, Interim Director, Department of Job and Family Services, with the concurrence of Thomas J. Eigel, County Administrator, to execute an agreement for recruiting services by and between the Clermont County Board of Commissioners for and on behalf of the Clermont County Department of Job and Family Services and Sharon Wiesenhahn for the provision of moving children from foster care into permanent adoptive homes. It's in concert with the grant agreement by and between the County of Clermont, Ohio, and the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption relative to the county's participation in the Wendy's Wonderful Kids program, ratified by the Board of County Commissioners on July 24, 2019, in the amount of $70,000. It's effective for July 1, 2019 through June 30th of 2020, pursuant to and compliance with the terms and conditions specified therein, and contingent upon the release of the required purchase order in concert with requisition number 4113, dated July 2nd, 2019, relative thereto.
Board, you've heard the reading of the add-on for the Department of Job and Family Services with Sharon Wiesenhahn for the provision of moving children from foster care into permanent adoptive homes. Do I have a motion for approval?
Make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Ms. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Mr. Painter.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the next one was from the Board of County Commissioners, addendum number 1 to the Master Service Agreement for Bethesda Healthcare.
Good morning.
Morning, Yvonne.
Yvonne Smith, Benefits Coordinator for Clermont County. It is my recommendation, with the concurrence of Sandra Tahat, Human Resources Administrator, to authorize David L. Painter, President of the Board of County Commissioners, to execute addendum number 1 to the Master Services Agreement with Bethesda Healthcare Incorporated of Cincinnati, Ohio, for the provision of Employee Assistance Program for Clermont County employees and their eligible dependents, as outlined in the Tri-Health EAP scope of work, as identified in Exhibit A, previously ratified by the Board of County Commissioners on 11/7 of 2018, and effective for calendar year 2019, which modifies Exhibit A, specifically Article 2, entitled Scope of Services, subsection F, identified as Assistance and Counseling Services. This includes the following statement. If the problem is related to critical incidences at work, additional sessions may be purchased at the rate of $75 per session for an additional cost not to exceed $8,000, with a per-person maximum of 15 additional sessions for a total of 20 sessions, with the aforesaid services to be effective as of 6/1 of 2019, and with all other terms and conditions of the Master Services Agreement to remain in full force and effect, and contingent upon the issuance and receipt of an additional purchase order in and as it relates hereto.
Board, you've heard the reading of addendum number 1 to the Master Services Agreement with Bethesda Healthcare for the provision of employee assistance program. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Any other add-ons, Tom?
No, sir.
Then I will move to item I. I'm requesting board and executive session pursuant to section 121.22 G1 and G3 of the Ohio Revised Code to first consider the employment and compensation of one or more public employees, and second, to confer with the prosecuting attorney regarding pending or imminent litigation respectively. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and received a second. Roll call, Judy?
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. We will enter into executive session. We will return and we will conduct further business. We are back from executive session. No decisions were made, and we will move right on with the agenda. Tom, do we have any additional add-ons today for the agenda?
We have an item for the board to consider adding to the agenda. It's a joint application for employment of outside legal counsel.
You've heard the request to add an addition to the agenda for outside legal counsel. Do I have a motion to add the item to the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and it's received a second. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mr. Humphrey?
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Painter?
Yes. So we have added the item to the agenda. Judy, could you read the proposed item?
Under the Board of County Commissioners, it's a joint application with the prosecuting attorney to the Clermont County Court of Common Pleas for employment of outside legal counsel to represent Auditor Linda L. Fraley as it relates to all litigation resulting from the probable cause affidavit filed by Christopher Hicks and assigned in the Clermont County Municipal Court and designated as case number 2019 PC 00003. Recommendation of Thomas J. Eigel, County Administrator, to authorize David L. Painter, President of the Board of County Commissioners, to execute the joint application for employment of outside legal counsel with the Clermont County Prosecuting Attorney to the Clermont County Court of Common Pleas for the employment of the legal counsel pursuant to and in compliance with Revised Code Section 305.14 for the representation of Clermont County Auditor Linda L. Fraley in and as it relates to the litigation resulting from the probable cause affidavit filed by Christopher Hicks on July 22, 2019 in the Clermont County Municipal Court and designated as case number 2019 PC 00003.
Thank you, Judy.
Can I ask a clarification? What was the date of the filing on that?
It says July 22nd on this motion.
Thank you.
Which would have been 2 days ago.
Yes.
Yep.
And it is what is contained in the joint application.
Thank you.
You've heard the reading of the motion for a joint application for legal counsel for Linda Fraley due to a new received probable cause action from July the 22nd, 2019. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and it has received a second. Do we have any further conversation or discussion? I understand that this joint application is being requested because of the conflict of interest that the prosecutor's office would have representing Linda in this particular case.
Yes.
Is that
The
correct?
third paragraph indicates a conflict of interest exists, which precludes the prosecutor from providing representation to Fraley in this matter. The prosecutor is responsible for prosecuting criminal offenses within Clermont County. The prosecutor is also the statutory counsel for Fraley in her official capacity as the county auditor. County prosecutor is not permitted to perform criminal defense work. As such, the Clermont County prosecutor cannot defend Fraley against the criminal allegations set forth in the Hicks litigation.
And I understand from the court case that we attended up in Jerry McBride's courtroom that that's the case of all prosecutors' offices. You can't transfer that defense to another prosecutor's office because a prosecutor cannot defend you in a criminal case. So
My understanding, yes.
that's my understanding too. Okay. Any further conversation or discussion? Roll call, Judy.
Mrs. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Mr. Painter.
Yes. Any further additions to the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Hearing none, I will move to item J, county staff and elected official discussions. Do we have anybody today here from the county staff or elected officials that have any comments or discussions? Hearing none, I'll move to item K for member comments. Board, do you have any comments here today while we're still in session?
Nope, thank you.
Couple I'd like to make. One is Gail, thanks for filling in today. I understand it's been quite a few years that you've been up here and sat at this desk. So I believe you told me 6, is that correct?
I think that's the last time I did it.
Glad that you're here. And in addition, just some good news here in Clermont County. We received an announcement this morning that Total Quality Logistics is going to create 600 new jobs here in Clermont County and is going to make a $20 million investment. Total Quality Logistics is going to construct a second building at its headquarters campus at Ivy Point Boulevard in Union Township to accommodate its continued growth in third-party logistics. The goal of the expansion is to accommodate nearly 600 new employees that the company anticipates hiring preliminarily in sales and information technology over the next 5 years. Congratulations to TQL. I know as far as on my behalf, I am absolutely glad that they continue to invest their money here in Clermont County and that it results in jobs that can sustain families here. So great news.
It was a good investment of the Board of County Commissioners back in the day to buy that land and make it available for construction
And you know,
paying off.
you're absolutely right. I mean, you were here when the foresight was there to acquire that property and to move forward and
I
look
was here after that. Yep.
look what it's done.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Anything else? Well, with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved and second. Roll call, Judy?
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
Mrs. Corcoran.
Yes.
Mr. Painter.
Yes, this concludes our meeting for January the 24th, 2019. Thanks for July 24th, 2019. Thanks for tuning in today, and we will see you next week.